Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Thompson, and I am going to be your facilitator for today. I am so excited to be joining you and to be presenting on blended classroom using Microsoft Teams. Please feel free to utilize the chat. You can ask questions there. You may also share your state, title, and grade level if you would like to. It's totally up to you. This session will last approximately 1 hour, probably a little bit sooner than that because I'd like to take about 10 minutes for Q&A. In this session, we will cover how to use the blended classroom approach with Microsoft Teams. As I said, my name is Tiffany Thompson. I am a Microsoft Learning Consultant for the DC, Virginia area. I am a Microsoft Master Trainer and a Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert. Just a little bit of information about me. I have experience in K through higher education. So I've taught elementary school, middle school, high school, and I've taught collegiate classes. Right now, I think my favorite grade level or level is working with educators such as yourself. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, please feel free to do so with at DigiScholars. And then after this session, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me at tiffany.thompson@usmie.com. I'm going to ask for the sake of time and for the webinar, if you would be so kind as to keep your audio on mute and post your question, as I said, in the chat, and I will stop to answer any questions that may arise. As you probably are aware, Microsoft Teams is the hub for teamwork in Office 365. Teams is a collection of people, content, and files that you can use to interact with your colleagues or your students. With chat, calls, and meetings, you can access or work with your students on the go at any time, anywhere. You can use integrated Office 365 apps, and it's customizable and extensible. So that means that you and your school district or your school can choose what applications, what features you want to have turned on or turned off. There are many uses for Microsoft Teams, including, but not limited to, curriculum reviewers, grade level teams, using it for human resources if you're at the district level, using class teams if you're an instructor, and even the opportunity to use it as an administrator with your staff if you are a principal, maybe a department chair, or even, let's say, a CEO of a large or small school district. Today, we're going to focus on how to use Teams for blended learning. And we're going to start with just some basics before we dive into a live demo. So, what is blended learning? Blended learning is the combination of face-to-face learning and online learning. Some people tend to compare or interchange the terms blended learning and flipped learning, but they're two totally different approaches. Blended learning is the opportunity to use resources and online tools to engage your students while also meeting with them in a face-to-face situation. We know that right now, many school districts are choosing to use or choosing to stay remote in the fall of 2020 so that we can ensure that of our students' safety as well as the teacher's safety. And with that, we're trying to figure out, or you're probably trying to figure out, how you can use Microsoft Teams to sort of have this blended learning approach. There are many benefits to blended learning. One of them is that you have more efficient use of teacher preparation time. So this means that as an instructor or as a teacher, you can populate your course or populate Teams with all of the resources that your students need for the day, for the week, or even for the month if you want to plan that far out. And then you can use your time a bit more wisely. The second benefit is that students are able to access the materials for study and review. You can incorporate PowerPoint presentations, study guides that you've created in Microsoft Word. You can even add videos from YouTube, or if you're using other video streaming sources such as Khan Academy, you can add links to those videos so that your students can review them before a midterm exam, before a test, or before a live lesson. The third benefit is that as a teacher, you're able to spend more time engaging with your students. This is where active learning comes in. Active learning is when our students really get to show what they know, to dive into the content, and to develop those higher order thinking skills. When you're using the blended learning approach, you can have them look at the materials either before class or after class, and then you spend more time with those hands-on activities or practices during your live session in Teams. The fourth benefit is that class time is devoted to active learning. So I sort of discussed that, but active learning would involve things such as discussions, maybe small group assignments, having students present content, simulations, real world scenarios, or even participating in the discussion of, let's say, case studies, or even jigsaw activities. The next benefit is that as the teacher, you can adjust your in-class material to fit your students' needs. So depending on the needs of your students, you could change the material. If you have more ELL students, if you have students who, let's say, prefer, if they are audiovisual learners, or if they're logical mathematical learners, you can change your in-class material easily and prepare those before the start of your live session. Online quizzes is a benefit. I love using Microsoft Forms for online quizzes, and you can quickly and easily incorporate those into your Microsoft Teams environment for exam preparation, for summative assessment, and even for formative assessment. And then last but not least, as the instructor and even learners, they have more autonomy over their learning. And you as the instructor have more autonomy over how your class engages with the content. I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about the 6 models of blended learning. You have the face-to-face driver model, the rotation model, the flex model, the self-blend model, the online lab school model, and then one that you don't see here, because this is the one that we're going to focus on more since we're changing the way that we engage our learners because of remote learning. So the last one is called the online driver model. But let me tell you a little bit about the face-to-face driver model. So this model actually works best for diverse classrooms in which students are functioning at various levels of ability and mastery. In general, only some students may participate in online learning components. Because of the very nature of remote learning and virtual learning for many school districts in the fall, the face-to-face driver model may not be ideal in this particular or in your particular school or district. But here's some other informational things that you need to remember about the face-to-face driver model. With this model in a blended learning classroom, students at mastery levels above their grade level may proceed at a more rapid pace. So this prevents boredom by providing appropriate challenges for your highly capable students. This means that you can change the videos, you can add other presentations, you could possibly create private channels and create and use those channels for your high performing students. Some schools have also found this model to be helpful because it is a way to engage your English language learners who sometimes fall behind, not because they're incapable of understanding a concept, but because they're not native speakers. So in this case, the face-to-face driver model of the blended learning classroom or blended learning environment would be really beneficial. The second option is the rotation model. This really is just a variation of learning stations, or the learning stations model that many of us as educators have been using for years. As a first grade teacher and a former second grade teacher and elementary school teacher, I have used this learning station model or the rotation model many times across different subject areas. And so with this, there's sort of a set schedule by which students have face-to-face time with the teacher, and then they move to online work. With this, to me, it seems to be most popular in elementary classrooms in which the teachers have already used and are comfortable with traditional learning stations. So if you are an elementary school teacher and you've been using those learning stations in your classroom, the idea of the rotation model in an online environment or a blended learning environment using Microsoft Teams would become really successful because the students can be divided in channels or small groups based on their skill levels, and let's say reading or math or even social studies. Thus, students who are performing well, for example, in math, but maybe not in reading, may have that face-to-face time or more face-to-face time with you as the teacher before rotating to their online, so to speak, learning stations for math or for another subject. With this model, you're also able to give struggling students more individual assistance based upon their needs. And we'll look at how to set up some of these groups or set up these channels and use the resources in a demo shortly. The flex model relies heavily on online instructional delivery. That means that you as the teacher are acting as a facilitator rather than the primary deliverer of instruction. And we've heard teacher as facilitator multiple times in many different PDs. But with the flex model, it appears to be used or most used and most successful in alternative school settings where the majority of the student population is considered to be at risk, or in alternative school settings where students are enrolled in, let's say, work-study programs, or they have attendance problems, or they've been placed in like part-time schooling, in a part-time schooling program. As a rule, I would probably suggest that the flex model be used in those secondary environment because it relies heavily on the online instructional delivery. And what I mean by this is that in this particular model, the teacher may only meet with the student once a week instead of meeting with your class or your students daily as in an elementary classroom. This means that you will rely on populating your team's environment with really good, rich resources that your students can use to learn the content, whether that is a video or a PowerPoint presentation or a Nearpod presentation. The next model is the self-blend model. So with this one, this allows your coursework to be offered online or for the students to enroll in courses that sort of supplement their regular programs of study. This probably would be be more useful for those secondary students as well. So if you are a teacher in a school district and you do not have a regular set of students every single day for, let's say, a particular term or semester, but instead you have a rolling set of students who are joining your class or joining your course because they need to for credits or because that class is not offered at their school, then that would be sort of the self-blend model. Students in this particular blended learning environment are usually highly self-motivated. That means that you would probably be engaging in more one-to-one sort of tutoring or meetings with students versus whole class teams meetings. Next, we have what I call the online lab school model. You may have heard of this before. It involves students traveling to and from a school with totally online educational delivery for courses. With this, It's typically reserved for schools that don't have certified teachers on hand, and they may have more trained paraprofessionals, so to speak, who supervise. So they're in a classroom, but they're in a room with tons of computers, possibly a computer lab, and the teacher who has developed this sort of course is not necessarily there. So this will be useful if your school in the fall is intending to have classes on, let's say, a day, B day sort of rotation, where on A day you have 500 of the students come, on B day the other 500 of those students come. With that, students can either log on when they're home, they can log on to that online environment in Teams, or while they're in class, if they have to, if the teachers have to split up because of the social distancing, then the students could use their personal laptop devices or use the school devices to access the content. And then the online driver model, this is the one that I believe many schools are going to use in the fall when it comes to remote learning and blending your learning or blending your classroom using Microsoft Teams. With the online driver model, it is the complete opposite of a traditional face-to-face instructional environment. Some liken it to the flipped classroom. And with this model, students are working from a remote location, usually their home. They receive all of their instruction through some kind of online platform, whether it's the learning management system or Microsoft Teams in this case. Sometimes there are check-ins, so the teacher and the student can chat. For example, in Microsoft Teams, they could set up individual Teams meetings using Meet Now. This model works really well for remote learning, for students who have, let's say, maybe chronic illness, students who have other obligations that demand flexibility. And when I say that, I mean those students that you probably have experienced that have, let's say they are really talented gymnasts and they are practicing many hours throughout the day, but the school has provided them some sort of flexible learning plan. So those type of students would do really well with this type of environment. And then what's nice is this particular model can also be used in an elementary classroom. So the reason it's called the online driver model is because the students are really driving the instruction, so to speak. The teacher is still a facilitator, so you are populating Teams with the content. You are determining a general sort of schedule, meaning when the face-to-face or that online meeting will take place, but students can engage with the content sort of at their own pace, which is why the flipped classroom is likened to this particular approach. Now, when I teach blended learning courses, or when I'm working with school districts or teachers, and even when I'm teaching my collegiate level courses and we're using a hybrid format or blended learning format, I like to use what's called the 5Es model. And many of you may have heard of it before, but it is based on the constructivist approach to learning. Two famous constructivists or constructivist researchers are Howard Gardner and Jean Piaget. I'm sure we've all heard of them before. And with this particular model, it proposes that students build their own learning or their own understanding of new ideas, new concepts, new skills, but that the teacher organizes it in a format that is easy for them to sequence. It is focused heavily on active learning and collaborative learning. So it's not just, oh, the students are writing a paper or they are taking a quiz. It is They are discussing chapters with their classmates, let's say in a threaded post inside of Microsoft Teams. They are creating PowerPoint presentations or Microsoft Sway presentations. They are exploring concepts through videos or other apps that you've built or pulled into Teams. There are 5 stages of the 5 E's approach. So you have your engage stage, explore, explain. Oops, I see I have a typo there. Your extend or elaborate, and then your evaluate stage. So I'm going to quickly go through those, and then we can dive into how that looks in a Microsoft team. With your engage, or the purpose for the engage stage is really to pique your student interest and to get them personally involved in the lesson, while also sort of pre-assessing their prior knowledge. We do this all the time as teachers, whether we are elementary teachers, secondary teachers, or even higher ed faculty. During this stage, students make connections between past and present learning experience, sort of setting the groundwork for upcoming activities. It is their first encounter with a particular topic, possibly, and it helps you to set and identify the instructional skill and instructional tasks. So for example, in Teams, this may be setting the lecture materials that you're going to use to get them engaged or excited. It could be a video, such as a YouTube video. It could be your own video that maybe you created in Microsoft Stream. It could be a Sway presentation, anything that will excite and draw on the student's curiosity. Then you have your explore stage. This is where you are exploring, or the students are exploring, the concept through hands-on activities and practice. This is where you really get students involved in the topic, providing them with a chance to build their own understanding. This is where they are engaging with content, phenomena, materials. As they work together, they are building sort of this set of, let's say, common experiences, which prompts more sharing, more communicating. And as the teacher, you're acting as the facilitator. So you're providing the materials and you're guiding the student's focus. Emphasis is placed on critical thinking, questioning. This is where sort of you may want to include like Socratic questioning, and even analysis. So really those higher order thinking skills. Your explain stage is where you are providing either the teacher-led session, or it could be a student-led session where the students are having an opportunity to communicate what they've learned so far and figure out what it means. This is where you may have your discussions, where you may have your live class meeting. You may have the students participate in a debate in a private channel that you set up for them. Or you can even use whiteboarding. You can use the whiteboard feature in Office 365 and pull that into a Teams meeting. Next, you have your elaborate phase or stage. This could be a second lecture. This could be where you extend your students' knowledge, where you have them continue to explore concepts and apply what they've learned in a real world scenario. And then last but not least is the evaluation stage. So the purpose of this stage is for both you as the teacher and the students to determine how much learning and understanding has taken place. It could be you posting a Microsoft form or a poll as an exit ticket. It could be an assignment where you actually create an assignment as a regular assignment, or one that you pull out of your OneNote class notebook. So there are many tools for blended learning in Microsoft Teams. These are just a few, and I'm going to try to show you as many options as I can in our short amount of time. But we're going to walk through how you can actually set up your Microsoft Teams for blended learning with a live demo. All right, and then we'll come back and talk about some best practices. Before we do that, I'm going to check the chat to see if there are any burning questions. So do we have any questions that need to be addressed before I move on? And I don't see any in the chat. All right, so I'm going to take that as a no, and I'm going to continue. All right, so this is my Microsoft Teams environment, and it's a sample third grade class. I have tons of other classes, as you can see here, but today I'm just going to walk you through just a sample class and how you can use that 5 E's approach for blended learning. In this particular course or class, I have a foreign language section or channel, music channel, art, language arts, math, social studies, and then I have some private small groups here. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to set up a private channel for your small groups. Next to your team name, you'll see 3 dots or your ellipses for more options. When you click those 3 dots, you have the option to add a channel. When you add a channel, you can give your channel a name. You can call it flex group, small group, whatever you want to call it, totally up to you. You can even add some emojis using the window period shortcut keys to help your students to easily identify this as maybe a small group. I know when I was teaching elementary school, I would call my students like the butterflies and the ladybugs, and maybe some of you still do that. So if you wanted to actually, or you call them the dinosaurs, you could actually pull in an emoji to make it easier. This is just a quick trick to make it easier for your students to identify. So I'll just use this caterpillar. I guess that looks like a caterpillar. And then you want to change your privacy from a standard channel to a private channel. So this will make the channel private so that you can invite particular students to it for your small group. So I'm going to click next. And now I can add different students to this particular course, or to this particular channel. So if I have 4 or 5 students enrolled in my class that are actually a part of group 1 or the caterpillars, I can quickly and easily pull them into this group. I could also add teachers. So if I have invited, like if I have a paraprofessional, if I have invited the the music teacher, or let's say the PE teacher, or a special ed teacher to my class team, I could pull them in to this particular group so that they could work with this small group. All right, so I'm going to skip that part for now, adding my students. So now I created a private channel. So as you can see here, I tend to number mine to make them easier. And then sometimes I'll put an emoji if I want to, but that's the easiest way to quickly create a private channel. Now, I'm going to walk you through a sample language arts lesson and how I use that 5 E's approach. All right. So in this particular course or this class, we were learning about letter writing. And remember, I said that the purpose of the engage phase or stage is to really pique your students' interest and get them personally involved in the lesson and get them excited about the content. If this was a face-to-face class, I would actually read a book, and I actually have this book. I would read this book called The Letter to my students to sort of get them thinking about letter writing. I could optionally write a letter to someone and actually, or have a handwritten letter and read it to them if I was in a face-to-face class. For this particular lesson, I decided to find a book or luckily I was able to find a video on YouTube of the letter book actually being read to students. So I could pull this video in so that my students could watch this and begin to think about letter writing. After that is when I would move into the explore phase. Now I could add more information here. So I just said, watch this video to learn more about letter writing and think about people whom you'd like to write a letter to. And so the students, they could reply, and I probably should have provided more direction, but this was just a sample. They could reply and say, oh, I used to write letters to my grandma every summer. I want to write a letter to my grandma and grandpa this summer too. Next would be the explore phase or stage. And you'll see this is where I actually included a video that talks about writing a personal narrative and brainstorming the whole friendly letter process. As a teacher, remember I said that you could actually do a lesson here or share your own stream video. You could have a discussion here. So for me, I decided to add another video to show the brainstorming process of writing a friendly letter so that we could begin to discuss it during our explain stage or our live session. So I have lots of typos today. So here in my explain, I actually posted a link for my students to join for a live class that we were going to have where I will explain how to brainstorm and go through the brainstorming process of writing a friendly letter and looking at different templates that we could use. There's the link to that meeting there. And then I have my elaborate phase where the students will complete a Nearpod activity. And then I haven't posted the evaluation stage yet. So I'm actually going to go to my social studies section and we're going to build out a lesson from scratch. And it sounds like someone came off mute. Is there a burning question? No? If there is not a burning question, can you please mute? All right. So I do see that there are some questions in the chat. I'm going to come back to those. And I will post the answers to them as well in the chat. So no worries, I'll come back. All right, so in this particular social studies channel, we're going to build out a sample blended learning lesson. So for my engaged, so my students will be learning or we're learning about the French Revolution. Now, I could include a video here, but I chose to use Kahoot. Kahoot is, if you haven't heard of Kahoot, it is a really great resource that you can sign up for as an educator, and it is game-based learning. Students, you can actually use a Kahoot live, or you can use it as a self-paced activity to sort of gauge students' interest and to pique their interest about a particular topic. So for me, I just copied the link. So I was in my Kahoot account and I copied the link to this Kahoot. I can also share directly to Teams through Kahoot, which is really nice, that integration that's there. But I just copied the link and I pasted it in my text editor at the bottom of the post tab. Now, what I like to do to make it easier for my students, as well as to keep them on track and to help them navigate Teams easily, I actually name or highlight the different stages. Sometimes I may go as far as to do day 1, day 2, day 3. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So in your post tab at the bottom, you're going to click your text editor, and then you're going to change from new conversation to an announcement. When you do that, it gives you this nice headline and allows you to add text that is easily identifiable for your students. So for us, since we're using the blended learning approach and using this 5 E's model, I'm going to actually call this day 2. and we'll call this Explore. I can provide a subheading if I want, but here is where I would provide more direction or the resources that I want my students to engage with. So I already posted this game here, so I'm actually going to go back and discard, and I'm going to click my three dots to edit this. So I'm going to change this to day 1, engage. I could also call it Monday. However you organize it is totally up to you. And then my link is there, so I'll probably want to provide some directions to my students. So I might say, this week we will learn about the French Revolution and its causes. Click the link below. I can't type today. To play a Kahoot game to test your knowledge. And then I'm going to click this check mark so that it is updated. All right, so there we go. So now I can move on to my Explore stage. Now here is where I want to really have them dive deeper into the topic. This may be where I add another video, or if I have a Nearpod presentation that I want them to review that's really interactive and has them to start thinking, I could do that and then provide maybe a discussion question. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to Nearpod. Nearpod is also a great resource. Nearpod is an interactive presentation tool. This is my Nearpod library. I tend to search Nearpod for free resources. So you can find resources by topic. You can search for free or paid. I always choose free, of course. And then you can use the resource in your team's environment. So here's one, the French Revolution begins. I'm just going to select this one. I'll click on it. And I can quickly preview it to see what the objectives are, if I think it's a good lesson. And in this case, we don't have an extended amount of time, so I'm going to say this is going to be a great exploration activity. I'm going to click Add to Library. And it looks like I have used up all of my free Nearpods, but that's okay. So I'm going to share this link anyway. So I'm going to copy this. And now I'm going to go to my conversation editor here. In the subhead, I'm going to provide directions. Please review the Nearpod presentation below and then answer the discussion question following. The following discussion question. All right, so I can paste that there. Now, optionally, so I'm going to go ahead and send that, but optionally, I can click my tab at the top to add a tab, and I can search for the Nearpod app, and I can pull this directly into my team. Now, you are going to have to sign into Nearpod, and you can see that I'm already signed in there. And I didn't add that one, but I'm just going to quick one really quickly. So I'm going to choose that option. And then I'm going to disable posting it as an announcement and then click save, because the only reason I'm doing that because I'll delete this later, because this is about rules and laws. But now this is added at the top of that channel so that it's highlighted for students to use. So that's another option for adding a resource during the exploration phase. Now, normally I would go ahead and add my explain, but I told my students I wanted them to answer a discussion question. So I'm going to change this to an announcement. I'll call this discussion 1, because normally I have 1 or 2 discussions. And then say, what were the causes of the French Revolution? Do you think they could have been prevented? Please click reply to respond. All right, so now my discussion is there and I can move on to my next phase, but I'm going to actually stop and take questions before I move on. So the first question that popped up, it says, how would I blend an Apex economics platform into lectures in Teams? So if you are using, so I'm not as well versed on Apex, so I'm going to sort of speculate here that it is sort of like a learning management platform, but all of the videos and materials are built in. If that is the case, then you can simply find the resource that you want to share from Apex, click add a tab, and you would bring it in as a website. A website option allows you to add any web link, regardless of its location. So you could pull that in as a tab so that it appears automatically at the top of your students, at the top of the channel, and then you can refer students to it. So you can say, so for example, for day 2 for Explore, you might say, please click the Apex resource at the top to review the presentation on economics. Come back here to do blah, 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 blah. So that's an option. Then another question says, how do you add the emoji next to the channel name? Is there a shortcut for it? Yes, the shortcut is simply Windows period. So on your Windows keyboard, if you hold down the Windows icon and click your period button at the same time, it will bring up the emoji keyboard. Alan has another question. If I have 4 classes of economics, can I explain to all 4 classes at one time instead of each individual class? I believe I understand what you're saying, and you absolutely can. So I'm going to click here under my conversation editor, change this to an announcement because now we're on day 3. And this is my explain stage. So normally my explain is when I do my live lesson. So I'll say, join me for a live class at 2:00 p.m. tomorrow. Now, at the very top, when you create an announcement, you can actually click post in multiple channels. And then when you select those channels, you can select any course or any team. So I can post this across all of the teams, class teams that I have for this particular subject. So if you're teaching 4 economics classes and you have all of your class teams already set up, you would simply go to that class team and then select the channel where you want to cross post. Hope that answers your question. Let's see. Can it be possible for an intervention teacher having students from different classes? I believe you're asking if you can create a team of students from different classes. If you're asking that, then the answer is yes. So when you join or create a team, so at the very bottom of your screen, when you click create a team, you can add any student across your district. So if you're an intervention teacher and you want to have small groups for just the students that you work with across your classes, across the school, then you can do that. If that is not what you're asking, please feel free to rephrase your question and I will answer. Lorraine says, is this being recorded? Yes, it's being recorded. And the link to the presentation will be posted in, I believe it's going to be posted in the same location as the registration, but I can confirm for you and shoot you an email when the presentation is over. Let's see, Florence, when you pose a lesson from the Nearpod, can my students use the immersive reader to have the text read to them? And what is the shortcut for emoji on Mac? I don't have window. So I am sorry that I don't know the shortcut for emojis on Mac. And I'm not sure if there is an emoji keyboard on Mac. So built into Windows 10 is an emoji keyboard. So I'm not sure if that is the case for a Mac computer. And for Nearpod, some of the Nearpod lessons have have the immersive reader built in. So I'm going to go back to my home page and let's go to what I already have. Let's do laws. Got it. All right, so no students have signed in, but I'm just going to keep going. So if it is a built-in website, then the immersive reader will appear. Most of these look like polls and matching games, so no, that wouldn't be the case for these. Yeah, so this one doesn't have any built-in web pages. However, on Buncee, most of Buncee's, and we're going to get to Buncee. I was going to show you that next, but most of the Buncees have the built-in immersive reader already there, so you don't even have to worry about it. It doesn't even matter what's on the page. As long as there's text, it will read, or your students will be able to use immersive reader. So we'll look at that next when we get to the extend phase. I think there were 2 more questions, and then I'm going to continue. Let's see. Oh, maybe not. Okay. All right, so back in my team, I'm on day 3 explain. So I have join me for a live class at 2 p.m. tomorrow. What I like to do is schedule my team meetings inside of Teams and then schedule it in that actual channel so that my students don't need to worry about clicking a link or me posting, or I don't have to worry about posting a link somewhere else. So I normally will provide directions, and then I'll use the image app to search for an arrow so that they'll know that I'm going to post the link below. So I probably should have said down arrow. There we go. So join me for a live class tomorrow. Click the link below. All right. So now that I have my explain there saying that we're going to have a live class, I need to schedule my class. You don't want to forget this part. So I'm going to go to my calendar, schedule a new meeting, live class, and I'll title it. It's always important to title your class so that when you go back to stream, if you record it, then it's easy for you to find the recording and the students. So I'm going to click type French Revolution live class. And I said 2 p.m. tomorrow, the 21st. Now, this is where it's important. You need to select the channel. So I was in my 3rd grade class, social studies section. So that's where I want to post this link because I told the students they're going to click the link below. So when I click send, now I can go back to my team and there's the link. So the students will know that on the 21st, they'll click this link and they can join the live session. Now I can move on to my extend phase, or I can add more. You can always populate your course with more information so that your students are consistently engaged. Now, during my live session is where I would actually use some of those active learning tools. So I may use Whiteboard or I may use Nearpod. So I'm going to show you both really quickly. So in Office 365, I can go to my whiteboard. And my whiteboard is just like a regular whiteboard that you may have in your class. So I'm going to click Create New Whiteboard. And now I can use my pen tools to draw. So maybe I'm, drawing the French Revolution and them going to war. And at any time, I can actually click this share button at the top and create a sharing link. And I could share this with my students. Now, if you have a group of 30, you may not want to share this link because students can sometimes just go overboard with the whiteboard. You can always disable it at any time, but let's say, for example, you wanted to use this with your whole class. Now I can paste that link in the chat, and now all of you have access to this whiteboard and you can participate. So if I asked a question, maybe I wanted someone to, fill in the dialogue for the different major people that were participating in the French Revolution. I could have someone do that, or I could have them draw their own. If this was a math class, I may have a problem up there that I want my students to actually solve. If you're using a small group, so if you had created a team meeting in one of your private channels, then you could use whiteboard and it would only be 4 or 5 students, and it probably is a lot easier to manage than having 30 or more students on a whiteboard. You could also do a live Nearpod session. So if I go back to my Nearpod lesson, here's the code. So at any time, I could have my students participate in this session interactively. So this is a presentation, but it has interactive components such as a poll. Students can answer questions, and all they would need to do is type in join.nearpod.com in a separate tab in their browser, or if they're using their mobile device, they can do that. And then they would input this code and join my live session, and I would be able to walk them through my lesson. PowerPoint Office 365 just recently released PowerPoint Live, which is very similar to this. And you could use PowerPoint Live during your live session. All right. Now I'm going to go back to Teams. So we've done our live class. Now we want to move into the extend. So this is day 4, extend. Remember, the extend phase is where you allow students to use their new knowledge and continue to explore how to use that knowledge with previously learned knowledge, or for them to just make connections with related concepts or even their own personal experiences. So this could be where you create an assignment for them to complete, some sort of real world activity. So maybe I have create a sway presentation or a sway flyer persuading the French not to engage in war. Something simple like that. And then you create your assignment, and I'm going to send it here, or these are the directions. But now I'm going to go to my assignments tab and actually create this assignment as a graded assignment. So in my assignments tab, I'm going to click create, choose assignment, give it a title, so sway flyer. I can provide additional instructions here and even resources. So if I have a sample sway, or if I have a page in my OneNote notebook that gives clear directions on what should be included, I can include that as the resources. Then I'm going to choose the number of points that it's worth. I could optionally add a rubric, and now I'm going to click assign. So now in my team, that assignment has been posted for my students. And I may want to provide a little bit more direction that says, please click assignments on the left navigation to submit. And then last but not least would be my evaluation phase or stage. This is where you would have students either complete an exit ticket or possibly a quiz. So you could go to Microsoft Forms, create a quiz, and then share that quiz with your students. So I'm just going to create a sample quiz. I'm just going to give it a title. So French Revolution. Give it a theme. And I know that there are no questions, but this is just for a demo. I'm going to click share, copy the link, and then I can go back to my team and paste it there. So I might say, complete the following quiz on the French Revolution. All right, so before I move on, I'm going to pause for more questions and then begin to wrap up. Absolutely, I can show you Buncee. So let me close out of some of this. All right, so Buncee is an interactive board or presentation tool as well that you can use in any of your courses. Students can actually create their own Buncees as well, so it can be used as an evaluation tool. As a matter of fact, that would be a really good evaluation or assignment for this particular French Revolution assignment. So you can create your own Buncee, or you can go to the Ideas Lab at the top and search for different topics. So if you are not a fan of creating PowerPoint presentations, but you want your students to really be engaged with learning, you can use a tool such as Buncee. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. They don't have any French Revolution presentations, but I'm going to just choose a random one that I already have. So here's one that says Real Life Hero. When you open it, you'll see that at the bottom it tells me that there are 5 slides. My students can go through the slides or go through the presentation on their own. They could also create a presentation. Let's go to one that is a little bit more. Here's one. This is one on a bill. So as they go through, you see how it's interactive. There's some graphics and animations. It's really a good engagement tool for students, especially in an online course or blended learning course. But you can add these Buncees directly to your team's environment. So when I'm ready to share this Buncee, first I could choose to share it directly in Teams, or I can get the code. I could share it with my students directly, but normally I just post it in Teams. So I can copy this link, go to my Teams environment, and as part of the extend or even explain or elaborate, wherever I want to put it, I could just paste that link. But optionally, I can add it as a tab so that it is at the forefront of the lesson for the week. So in your tab applications, you can click Buncee. And when you choose Buncee and paste the link, it actually embeds it into the tab so that students don't need to leave outside of the Teams environment. So I'm going to click Save. And now that Buncee is embedded there for students to use or view. They can use the tools at the bottom as well to pan, to zoom in, and then they can even autoplay. And when it autoplays, it'll actually play just like a PowerPoint slideshow, which is really nice. So you just saw that it switched slides. All right, so I know there was a lot to try to cover in a short period of time, but I want to wrap up with just some tips and tricks that I have for using Teams for blended learning, or some best practices. So this recording will be available for view or later viewing, but here are just some tips that I think are really good for using Teams with your classes. So I divided them into different categories. We have managed communications, class meetings, and then student engagement. Managed communications. Whenever I'm using Teams with my students, I always use the general channel for announcements. And I set up channel moderation, so that my students can't post in that general channel. You can also set moderation for any of the other channels. So if you know that you only want your students to be able to reply so that it doesn't mess up the flow of your 5 E's, you can change your moderation in your Teams classroom. For your class meetings, I always suggest that when you're doing a class meeting that you set your norms from the beginning. So you tell your students to utilize mute. And then as the instructor, you can always mute all students if you need to. I would also suggest that when you set up those class meetings that you look at your settings to ensure that maybe you're the only one who can share content so that students can't take over your screen. And then some other tips for like student engagement. I don't want to read through them all, but just some of my favorite ones. Create student helpers in teams using tags. Use praise, the @praise option in the command bar to reward positive online behavior. And then teach students how to solve some of their own technical problems with teams by using help. And I'll quickly go through those three that I just stated. So first, in your command bar, if you type /help and enter, it will bring up the team's help page that gives you and your students tons of resources for how to navigate teams if they get stuck and you're not available, particularly with class time being limited or you not being available during an extended period of time because of remote learning or because of blended learning. The other option is using @praise. So in your class, if students do something really well and you want to praise them, you can use the praise option. So I'm going to click @praise in my command bar. And let's say students were being really helpful, a particular student. I can search for that student in my class and say, thank you for being a great help during our live class session today. And then you can send that praise to the entire team, but highlighting a particular student. And then last but not least is channel moderation. So next to any channel, you can click the 3 dots to get your options and then choose manage channel. And then you can turn on moderation so that only you can post and the students can only reply. So it looks like I am 2 minutes over, but I really do hope that this session was beneficial. I know that there is so much more to learn when it comes to using Microsoft Teams for blended learning or just for learning in general. And I see that there were 2 more questions. I'm going to answer those really quickly, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any burning questions. Like I said, after this session is over.